Hey guys, welcome back. Thank you so much for joining me for the podcast. We have a great guest, returning guest. Mitch has been with us a few times. I think this is the second or third time Mitch has been with us. I can't remember. We've been second time. We've been chopping it up for some time, and but Mitch has a great podcast where and business in general where he's really helping coach guys in particular to reconnect with their wives, really kind of level up in relationship, kind of deal with limiting beliefs, mindset, stuff like that. So Mitch has been growing exponentially lately, and I think it's because there's such a great need amongst guys and all of us in general to really take a self-leadership point of view of taking responsibility for our lives, moving forward, seeing what's in front of me, deciding whether I want that or not, and just putting pen to paper and really getting after it. So, Mitch, thanks for joining me again, brother. I really appreciate it. And we talked quite a bit before we pressed record, and it seems like you've hit some challenges recently, like technological challenges recently, but it seems like, as Romans says, all things are working out for the good. So,
Mm.
how have you been, man? Talk to me a little bit.
Yeah, thanks for having me on the show, man. I appreciate it for round
Anytime, bro.
two. Round two. You were on my
Round
show
two. You're
twice
my
too.
second repeat guest, besides my buddy Darren. He's like
Mm,
constant.
Well, you were
But
my first repeat guest. No, I don't mean
was
to one
I?
up you, but you were. You were.
Well, you did one up me, and I'm okay to be one upped.
No, man. Yeah, life's been wild. Yes.
Mm,
We were just talking just about business and all that stuff, but yeah. So I help high performing men reclaim their home, their health, and their
mhm.
happiness. That's what
Love that.
my three things. And so a lot of the language I know that if you're listening, you're a woman today. You also might hear me use some masculine language, but that's just because that's pretty much all I work with all day, every day.
Hmm.
So. But a lot of these concepts apply to both genders, certainly,
Yep.
and really, at the end of the day, my whole mission is to help men show up as powerfully at home as they do at work. I believe in the generational cycles and generational trauma and all those things. And at the end of the day, part of our mission at the Dad Nation is to help 500,000 men restore their marriages, their relationships with their children, all that stuff through media and mentorship. And so when I say media, I'm talking to the Dad Nation podcast. When I'm talking about mentorship, I'm talking about coaching and all those things. And because I am a product of a dysfunctional upbringing as well, lots of crime, in my past, abuse, all those different things. And so I did a lot of work, and I almost sabotaged my entire life because of the fact that my inner wounds began to bleed out into my marriage
Hmm.
as I became an adult. And then I was overweight, I was in debt, marriage was on the rocks, you name it. It was a painful journey, but when I learned how to transform my life and did all of that, I realized the importance of, especially for us as men, on how to really focus on the leadership at home and how to take ownership of your life, how to be just as good of a self leader as you are a business leader, and
Hmm.
what that looks like, because your presence matters. How you show up matters, not just for you, but for your family, for your children,
Hmm.
for your businesses, for the kingdom of God, you name
Hmm.
it. And so that's why I do what I do. And that's what you mentioned that I've been going hard. Well, that's what I've been doing. I'm on a big
Hmm.
podcast tour, if you want to call it podcast crawl. What I don't know what you want to call it, but just been telling
Not
people about the
not a beer crawl anymore. We're
not a
not
beer
doing those
crawl.
anymore.
I'm gonna call them a pod crawl.
Pod crawl.
They,
Yeah.
so
And
that's what
that
I've been
can
up to.
maybe be just as tiring as a pub crawl. You know what I mean? So
Just as hungover. So
yeah, that's so funny. Well, Mitch,
yeah.
hey man, so I like one thing when we were talking, and we'll jump into this in a second, but you mentioned the term personal leadership,
Mm-hmm.
and I think many of the people who would listen to my podcast would have heard me talk about self leadership quite a bit,
Mm-hmm.
you know, um, which I think those are the same thing, obviously.
Yeah.
Um, and I would love to know before we start getting into like, hey, what are the action steps? How would someone diagnose that this is a lacking area in their life? Like you mentioned a few things, okay? You mentioned there is a a past that is tattered in a sense, which I think a lot of us may have some parts of that. And I think nowadays some people wish they had it because it's just so trendy. Yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it's like your story's better than mine.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, stop it. You know, um, a lot of people have those issues. How would somebody know that maybe the past is bleeding through?
Mm-hmm.
Like for you, how did you come to the realization that, dude, I grew up this way and I'm seeing these similar patterns? Because that's an awakening moment.
Mm-hmm.
That's a moment where you're stepping out of where you are and you're like viewing your life as a spectator rather than as a participant. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So how would somebody know that this is something like when you're coaching, how do you lead guys through that? Like,
Mm. Yeah. How do you know that you're not leading yourself well? Right. I
mm,
think is what you're asking.
yes,
The first question I would ask is, are you content?
it's going.
Right? Are you are you at peace with who you are and how you're living? And
Mm,
you have to be honest with yourself because in my experience with so many of the men that I work, there is this existence of the man that they are today and the man and the husband and the father that they know they could be if they went all in, if they lived up to their full potential.
mm-hmm,
And in that gap is where that tension lies, where that maybe the unmet expectations, the broken promises, the insecurities, the
mm-hmm,
desires for what has not yet come, all those different things. And so what we need to understand is when we bring those two together and we begin living as the man that we say we want to be, we experience some contentment and some peace, right?
mm-hmm,
Because we are a man who is following through on the things that we said we would do, right? So when we talk
mm-hmm.
about self leadership, I'd actually kind of take it a step back to self confidence, right?
Okay.
Because and you know this, Adam, that your self confidence gets eroded when you stop keeping promises to yourself, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
And
So
we're the easiest person to break them with.
exactly. And so if I say to myself, yeah, tomorrow I'm going to get up at 5:30 and I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going to train. Or if I say tonight I'm going to come home from work and I'm not going to snap at my kids. Or
Mm-hmm.
tonight I'm going to stay off my phone and I'm going to be fully present with my wife. But I don't tell you, I may not even tell anybody else that, but I make a promise to myself. And when I don't follow through on that promise, even though no one else knows, I know. And then psychologically, your mind starts to say things like, why would anyone else trust you if you can't even trust yourself
Mm-hmm.
that you'll follow through? You're not a
Mm-hmm.
trustworthy person. And so this dissonance inside begins to grow because on the outside, you may look like you have it all together, but on the inside, you know that you're not living a life of integrity or character because you're not following through. You're not the man that you say you are, and you're not being that man to
Mm-hmm.
yourself. You understand what I mean? And
Mm-hmm.
so it's this idea that my insides don't match my outsides.
Mm-hmm.
And that becomes a bit of a challenge. And so we have this internal tension. And when we talk about self leadership, the first place to start is following through on those commitments that you made,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because if you're listening to this and it's going to sound strong, but if you're a pastor in a church or if you're a business leader, you have no business leading a business or you have no business leading a church if you're not leading yourself first and leading your home second.
Yeah,
That
no,
is the
that's in the
scripture.
scripture. Yeah.
Exactly. And so this is why it's so important to
Mm-hmm.
start with personal leadership, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not, I mean, yeah, okay, so we know it's scriptural, but and we know it's important for ourselves. But if you can't necessarily get the courage to do it for yourself, then take a look around you, right? Your kids, your partner. If you want to know if you're leading yourself well, is there peace in your home? Is there contentment in your is there contentment in your home, or is there tension? Is there frustration? Is there, have that conversation with your wife. Have you
Yeah.
lost her respect? Does she
Mm-hmm.
still does she still desire you? Does she still see you as a strong leader in the home? Does she still, you understand what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're losing, and don't get me wrong, this is very common. This was my story as well. This is how we
Sure.
got here
Sure.
because my relationship was on the rocks. Um, I began to lose the respect of my wife. Right? I
Mm-hmm.
began to lose the respect of those around me because I wasn't leading myself well first. Right? And so on the flip side of that, if you can identify with that and understand it, if there is this dissonance or this tension on the inside where you know that you're not necessarily following through on the things you said you would do, or you're not living in an integral life, or you look into your immediate family and you see tension or frustration or a lack of healthy relationships, that might also be a sign that you're not leading yourself well, because you can't lead other people when you're not leading yourself, right? It's
Mm.
just kind of where we're at, and we're drowned. In today's day and age, we're living in a world where it's almost dangerous to say that as a man you should lead. You
I
understand
know.
what I mean?
I know, right?
And
Yeah.
and you
That's
you
a
keep
that's a hard
you're
that's a hard one.
you're afraid to say that without getting canceled. And so not only, like, you may even want to, but you don't necessarily feel safe to, because um, we're told that masculinity is toxic, right?
Yeah.
We're told that, a lot of society would say that men don't matter. And so who are you to say you need to lead others and lead yourself, and all those different things? So we're confused about what that even looks like in the first place. That's
Yeah.
why we don't know when we're not doing it. Adam,
True.
we know today that the average American man spends up to 2,000 hours per day distracted by screens. I think that's the equivalent of 85 days a year. I mean, it's
So 2,000
astronomical.
hours a year.
Yeah. Did I say a day? 2,000 hours
Yeah.
a
I was
year.
like, there's some long days.
It's a very long day. It's one very
Yeah.
long
These
day.
solar cycles are different. Yeah. So
Yeah.
2,000 hours a year
Yeah.
scrolling.
Scrolling. And the idea here is that we're disconnected, right?
Hmm.
We're distracted
Hmm.
because we're not showing up for ourselves. We're not showing up at home. So that's, I think, why it's so important to be practicing self leadership. It all begins within, right?
Yeah. I think it's brilliant. It's simple,
Mm-hmm.
but the path of ownership is the hardest path that
Mm-hmm.
I find will go on, and not to chime in with like my own teachings, but um,
Teach me.
no, it literally is the hardest thing to get any individual to do is to see themselves without rose-colored glasses, without victim lenses, without excuses, with like, am I doing the things that I expect from other people or I expect from myself? It's such a difficult. Many people will go their whole lives and never look at themselves in a critical way without judgment and just say, is the math adding up
Mm-hmm.
to what I want in my life? And if it's not, then we all have an eraser and a pencil. We can all start dealing with. There's a lot of work. Like I had a buddy sit on my couch and he was talking to me, same stuff you're talking about. He's overweight. His wife, I mean, won't touch him. You know what I mean? Like, let's just be
Mm-hmm.
real.
Yeah.
She just wouldn't touch him. There was no attraction there, and when there was intimacy, it was forced, and
Mm-hmm.
like it felt like
Obligatory.
each were complying,
Mm-hmm.
right? Playing roles basically. And and like as he's talking to me, I could tell, like, dude, there's something else in there. Like, it's not just you and your wife, or there's not like just like some misunderstandings. There's like some stuff in you that you're not dealing with. And I started talking to him about it. And he literally said, he literally told me, he said, well, that sounds horrible. I would never, he said, that's the last thing that I ever want to do is go deal with myself. Right. That's what he told me on the couch. And I was like, okay, well, I hope you're happy with the way things are. You know, he's one of those guys you can talk to that way. Right.
Yeah.
And then one day he had a break,
Mm.
like something broke, and he had to go to like an intensive, and his life has been changed ever since. But it was literally the hardest thing he's ever done in his life.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
Seeing that mirror, am I content? Am I happy with the man I am? And if the answer is no, okay, well, where do we start? You
Yeah.
know, Mitch,
And that's
what would be some places to start? Like what would be where would I start, Mitch? Like if you were coaching me and I told you some of these things, like, dude, I am not showing up, bro. Like I am
mm-hmm.
sad. I'm getting drunk most nights or whatever. I'm drinking away my pain. I'm scrolling away my pain. How do I start?
Mm-hmm.
You know, what do I do?
Yeah, I love that. And you're right. We are number one, we're not honest with ourselves.
Mm.
And when we try to even flirt with doing that, it's painful. So we distract,
Yeah, of
right?
course.
We
Yeah, we
drink,
deflect it.
we
Yeah.
scroll, we
Hmm.
escape, right?
Of course.
So what the question is what do we need to do?
Where do I
And
start? Like, because
yeah,
most
where do
guys
we
are going to be
start?
overwhelmed by, I
Hmm.
would be overwhelmed. Like when I started this journey 10, 12 years ago, I was completely overwhelmed by the grossness, just the pain, and just because I come from the same stuff, you know,
Hmm.
abuse, all this other stuff. Like I come from all that. And if anybody wanted to hear it, I would tell it, but I
Hmm.
don't get into it because,
Yeah.
it doesn't always fit the subject matter. Um,
Where do we
but I
start?
was overwhelmed by the grossness of it. So how do we deal with that?
Yeah. So the big thing we need to do is focus. We need to begin with the end in mind.
Okay.
Okay. So Stephen Covey in his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, chapter 2 is literally called Begin with the End in Mind.
Okay.
Napoleon Hill, which is arguably one of the most influential thought leaders of our time, constantly talked about that. Begin with the end in mind. My transformation moment in my story happened. The second part, the turning point for me was when I was at a literal funeral and the minister said, "Are you living a life worthy of imitation?" And at that point, as I was getting ready to play and sing the last song in this funeral, I was 60 pounds overweight. I was 100 grand in debt. My marriage was in the middle of, or around the verge of divorce. I was medicating with alcohol and drugs, trying to cope. I lost my job, absolutely miserable. And so when he
Mm,
said, "Are you living a life worthy of imitation?" If you were to die, would people be inspired by the life you lived? I thought to myself, if this were my funeral, nobody would say, "I want his marriage," or I want the body that he had," or I want to manage my money like he did," or you name it. It Nobody would have said that. And
mm,
so for me in that moment, that was me literally beginning with the end in mind. It was like, well,
mm,
what do I want to be known for? Right? When I draw my last breath, because there's 100% chance that you will draw a last breath. And when you do, what will you be thinking about? Right.
mm,
And so, what we need to understand is it's so important to begin with that end, to look at the future and say, where am I headed? How's this working for me? Right. And if your marriage is super healthy and if you're in great shape and you're on the top of your game and your kids love you and you're connected, amazing. Bravo. Keep going.
yeah, keep it up, dude.
But if you don't like where you are at, ask yourself if it's your marriage or if it's your finances, if it's your fitness or if it's your, relationship with the Lord, whatever, how's it working for you? You doing it the way that you're doing, in 3 years from now, is this going to be better or is this going to be worse? Right. And so, because we need to understand, Adam, that like we are where we are today based on the decisions that we made 3 to 5 years ago. Like when I think about the decisions I was making 5 years ago, it makes total sense as to where I am, why I am where I am today. Now, if I want to be somewhere else, though, like if I don't like where I'm at, then if I don't learn how to make different decisions or think differently,
Hmm.
then I'm just going to wake up 5 years from now and life's going to look the same because 90% of the decisions we make every single day are subconscious. That means only 10% of the decisions we make we actually think about. This is why we can drive to work and not even know how we got there. This is why we can wake up a year later and wonder what happened to the time. And so life just carries us down the current. And then all of a sudden, unfortunately, some guys wake up and their wives are handing them the divorce papers,
Mm,
or they wake up to a heart disease or a heart attack. Or when I say wake up, you know what I'm talking about. They wake up to being 100 grand in debt or, whatever it is that is your
hmm.
challenge. And so let's not wait till it gets to that point and let's begin with the end in mind now. And so one thing that I do with my clients is it's a couple things. And it's really, it's this psychological concept of externalizing, right?
Okay.
So I just say, we're going to write a eulogy. You're going to write a eulogy today for the life. If you were to die today and your wife was going to write a eulogy for you tomorrow, write it in her words. What would she say about the man, husband, father you were if she
Mm,
was reading these words standing over your coffin today? Now, we're going to write a 2.0 version of that eulogy. If you were 100% the man that you knew you could be, that you were living up to your calling, that you were living up to your potential, what would she be saying then? Right. And then we're going to take that and maybe, so the first version gives us clarity. It forces us to be honest with where we're at. This is how
Hmm.
we begin with the end. The second version of the eulogy gives us a direction of where we want to go instead.
I
And so
love
then
that.
we reverse that, those results into, yearly strategies and then
Hmm.
quarterly or daily action steps to become that man. And then we hold ourselves accountable to it. So that's one way to begin with the end in mind. Another way, we could think about this is, this is one of my favorite questions in the world is, Adam, if I were to bump into you, I might have even asked you this because we're buddies. If I were to bump into you 3 years from now in the
Okay.
airport in Montana,
Let's just say,
uh,
let's just hope it's Montana because that sounds awesome.
and I were to say, Adam, how the heck have you been, man? It's been 3 years since I was on your show. And you were to say to me, Mitch, this has been the best 3 years of my life.
Well,
The question is, what would have to be true in your life for those years to be the best 3 years of your life?
mm,
And you get painfully specific. What does your relationship with your wife look like? What is your how much money you making? How are you serving in your local church?
hmm,
Where are you working? What are you driving? Where do your kids go to school? You name it, and you create it like a movie scene. It's like the final scene when people are driving off into the sunset. You get very, very clear. And then we take that image and we take that story, that scenario, and then we reverse engineer that. I mean, that works for people too, if they don't like
hmm.
the morbidity of the eulogy.
Yeah,
But what I love about the 3 year exercise is some people wrestle with 10 years, where you want
yeah,
to be
it's
in
a
10
long
years.
time. Like,
And even 5 years feels like a long time. But 3 years, you can kind of wrap your head around that, right?
yeah,
You're like, okay. And the thing is it has to make you a little bit uncomfortable, right?
hmm,
But it has to essentially embody all the things that you want to be. So that way, in 3 years, you will be known for, because when we ask the question, what do you want to be known for? In 3 years, this is what I'll be known for. Okay, how do we make that happen? Or if at the end of my life, I want to be known for this, okay, well, how do we make that happen? Right. And
mm.
so that day of the funeral, when the minister, he didn't even ask me that. I was just side stage putting on my guitar, but
You were getting paid to
um,
be there.
I was getting paid to be there. But I thought, what do I want to be known for? What legacy am I leaving? What would my wife say about me?
Mm,
And I think today, Adam, honestly, I think today my wife would stand over my casket and she would say, he dedicated his life to loving us, to loving the Lord, and he helped transform the lives of countless men and helped restore their marriages and
mm.
restore their relationship with their children and end generational curses. And it was an amazing mission. And he lived an amazing life. I genuinely think she would say that now, but it's taken this long for me to get to the point where now I feel like that is a life worthy of imitation. And so that when I get to the end of my life and I draw my last breath, I'll be able to do it in peace because I'll know that I've
Mm.
lived up to my calling, to my potential. Does that make sense? So
Yeah.
that's where I
Huh.
would that's where I would begin, you know.
Yeah, I like the idea of starting with the end or 3 year horizon.
Yeah.
Could do that. I think for me, I'm more extreme, so starting with the end, like when you die,
Mm-hmm.
you know, because fear tends to operate well with me. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
it's visceral too, right?
Yeah, it is.
Death.
And you don't, no matter how much we want, no matter how much, we want to be like, well, I don't really care what people think. Like a lot of guys will be like that, like, it just
Yeah.
it's, water off a duck's back, but we all care.
It's
We all care.
BS.
We that's why, certain cultures that people idolize today, one of their main goals was glory and reputation. You know what I mean? It's just like they wanted people to sing songs about them.
Mm-hmm.
So I like the idea of starting with like that's what Habakkuk says, like write down the vision, make it plain.
Exactly.
Like where are we going with the temple? That's what Habakkuk was saying. Like
Mm-hmm.
this is what we're asking for. So I really think that's powerful, and it's a difficult exercise,
Yeah.
right? Because there's a point in there where, and tell me if you've run into this with yourself or with other guys, where I either want to shy away from the light that is being shined on me, or I want to excuse my way through it, make excuses for how things are. Because we get into many times, like what I find I'll do is I'll see the reality and I'll start justifying the reality,
Hmm.
right? And how have you run into that? Like, have you like when you're coaching guys and dealing maybe with yourself in certain areas, like where you start finding reasons why this should be acceptable? You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
100%. Yeah. So there's two outcomes. The guys who
Hmm.
get it, and when they get it, they write it and they cry. It's crazy
It's
because they'll read
good,
it.
dude. Sometimes you
They'll
gotta let it out, bro.
dude. They'll that because I'll say, hey, you need to read this to your wife, right? You need to read this to me, and then you need to print it out and stick it, and you need to read this eulogy every quarter, every 6 months. I don't care,
Mm,
but something that's going to keep you tuned in. But tears are a part of it because
mm,
you can't truly be honest with where you're at and not be moved emotionally. It's an incredibly visceral exercise. You can
hmm.
picture your kids standing around your casket. Are you kidding me? I mean, it's powerful, right?
That's, that's
So there's
horrifying.
there's the people who get it, and then there's the people who write it, and I can hear their ego, and I can hear their pride, and I can hear their arrogance, and I can hear their
Sure.
victim mentality and their lack of ownership. And so I say, write it again. Write it again until you connect with it, because you're still making excuses for what that's going to look like,
Wow.
right? Because you're putting words in your wife's mouth that she wouldn't even say, and you and I both know that, right? So let's get real. Let's do it again. It's
I
crazy.
love that. No, like, and like, I'll be honest, that's what guys need. We need
Well,
that.
that's the problem, Adam. Is
Mm,
this is why we don't. This is why it takes us trauma to lead to transformation, right?
mm,
That's usually the case. That's usually what it takes for transformation is trauma. Some like epic, in a negative way, impactful event that shakes you to
mm,
your core. It's the cancer diagnosis, it's the divorce papers, it's the bank notice, it's the kids walking out, it's the whatever, and you're like, whoa, you know. But the reason why is we were never, especially as men, we live in a society that says you have to perform, you got to provide, you got to keep it all together, stuff it down, don't talk about it. Real men don't cry,
mm,
keep it together, right? And it's like we hide, we push it away. We're like, no, no, we got it all unlocked. We got it. So I look good for my neighbor, and I look good to my brother-in-law, and I look
mm,
good to, the guy in the church, and I look good to whatever. And then I ignore. And then for a moment, when I realize what's going on, I numb myself instead. Right. So
yeah.
arrogance, ego gets in the way. And then we
Mm,
lean into other things to satisfy us, either work or other vices. And so we
mm,
never actually peel back the layers and get honest. And then, and because we don't, something traumatic happens, and then it hits. But my
mm,
plea with every man that I talk to is like, do not wait. It could be so much easier if you just did the
mm,
work now. Jim Rohn, one of my favorite quotes, he says, we all must deal with one of two pains, right? The pain of discipline or the pain of regret.
mm,
Discipline weighs ounces while regret weighs tons.
yeah.
I will choose to weigh and take the pain of ounces of weight, of like discipline, of like putting in little, the workouts and having the tough conversations with my wife and following through and showing up for my son, and pay little prices versus the weight of regret in 20 years from now when I
Hmm.
realized I wasted my life and I got nothing to show for it.
Yeah.
You know what I
That's, yeah.
mean?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And I think that is, um, if you look, and this is just like, just so y'all, everybody listening know, this is a free flowing conversation. So these thoughts are coming to me I don't have questions in front of me. I'm not that prepared, everybody, just so you know.
I see him. He's lying. He's reading notes. I'm just kidding. He's not. He's like laid back in
Really,
his chair.
like,
It's
no,
great.
there's YouTube playing. No, I'm just joking. No, but like one thing that the Lord has been, I feel like the Lord has been taking me through in a track of thought and teaching. So I always personally teach out of my own experience. Like I don't like try to teach or coach people in what I think they need to hear, right? And particularly, I'm not like, hey, designing, you know, topics based on what that person needs to hear. I'm like, this is what's been happening in my life, so I'm gonna just lead it. I'm gonna share it. And I've been reading the book The Spirit of the Disciplines by Dallas Willard. I don't know if you've ever read it.
Not
Um,
that book. I've read a few other of his books, but
and his books are heavy, bro. I mean,
yeah.
Dallas is smarter than me and you and three other people. You know what I'm saying? So, you know what I mean? Like, so you read it, but he's just talking about the disciplines, the physical disciplines that Jesus and like the apostles must have interacted in to lead the lives that were exemplary for us to want to emulate, at least the outcomes, right? And there's this part where it's like this shying away from the pain that has to be reckoned with. And that's why I think Jesus put it in there was like anyone who wants to follow me, and following him is a daily choice,
Mm-hmm.
must deny himself. Like that, I read that scripture this morning based on just my normal reading in Luke chapter 9. He must deny himself and take up his cross. He must deny himself. And then like all of a sudden it pops up on my phone as like a Bible reminder,
Mm-hmm.
like I'm like, the Lord's working it through the algorithms, like you know what I mean? Like we sense confirmation in every little place. But it's this not shying away from the daily pain of reality of where I'm trying to get,
Yes.
right? Like you're talking about like, hey, I'm choosing to not excuse myself through this or
Yes.
numb myself through it. When I see it, I'm not numbing myself. I'm leaning into it
Yeah.
rather than leaning away from it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I just think there's just something so powerful about the acceptance of the pain that is going to come because pain's going to come no matter what's happening, right? Like the regret, the pain of discipline or the pain of regret, pain's coming
Mm-hmm.
one way or another because and not to be morbid or gross or weird, but it just is the case. We don't learn through good times, we learn through hard times. So we
Well, yeah, let's
celebrate
camp.
good times.
Yeah, let's camp out there for a second because let's think about it. I know a lot of you listeners are believers. You think when Jesus left his throne, that was easy? You think when Jesus was betrayed by his best friend, that was easy? You think when
No, he's a
Jesus was
man
being
of
tempted,
sorrows, like
exactly,
literally.
when he was being tempted in the desert, was that easy? When he was hanging on the cross, was that easy? No, none of it was easy. And
Nope.
that's the problem with us today. We live in a world where we're convinced that we think that one day it's just gonna be easy. David Data says this in his book, The Way of the Superior Man, and he's talking about them in the masculine context, but he says it's the great masculine error that men think that one day it's going to be easy, that one day you're just going to understand your wife, that one day you can stop
Mm-hmm.
working and sit on a beach and sip a margarita. That's the problem. And so we're so comfortable, and so we don't want to face the storm,
Mm-hmm.
and we're desperately waiting for someone to save us or for it to be easy. And I think I'm camping out here for a second, Adam, because I think what you're touching on here is so pivotal, and that is the one recurring thing that almost every guy that I've ever coached wrestles with, is because the reason why they can't face the life that they're living, or the marriage that's on the rocks, or the body that they've destroyed, or you name it, is because they've done it because they've been obsessed with the easy, and they've not been making the
Mm-hmm.
difficult decisions. And I love this concept of choose your hard, and I tell
Mm-hmm.
I tell guys all the time, I'm like, listen, the sooner you can understand and accept that life is not easy and will not be easy, the sooner you can be content. And it makes for terrible motivational speeches.
No, it's
But you
so
think
true. But it's
you think about it like this, right? Making wise decisions is hard. Making bad decisions is hard. Being overweight is hard. Being
mhm.
in shape is hard, right? Being disciplined is hard, but being lazy is hard. Um, Starting a business is hard. Working for someone else and building their empire is hard. Being rich is hard, but being poor is also very hard. Having a lot of friends is hard, and having no friends is hard. Fighting for your marriage is hard.
Mhm.
Divorce is also very hard, right? And
Yep.
so at the end of the day, I'm sorry to say, nothing is easy. You just have to
Nothing.
decide, what difficulty will you choose? What are you willing to sacrifice for? I
Hmm.
love the word passion, because when we look at the word passion, and the derivative actually originally coming from Christ on the cross and him suffering. That's really the question is you are, that's the definition of the word is what are you willing to suffer for? So when someone were to ask me, or if I were to ask somebody, what are you passionate about? You could also say, what are you willing to suffer for in this life? Because that's the thing
Mm,
that you'd be willing to pay a price
yeah.
for, right? And so that's the key is facing the storm and
Yeah.
not expecting things to be easy and saying how will I respond when it gets hard. And I'll speak to the
Mhm.
men for a moment because this is especially important for men because not just not just physiologically we've been built to carry more weight.
Yeah.
Psychologically you have the ability to contain thoughts and compartmentalize thoughts. We've been designed by God to handle adversity and to carry weight. So if
Hmm.
anybody should be tackling this, it's us.
Yeah.
You know
It's
what I mean?
true. And
Go ahead,
that
preach it.
leaning in, that daily leaning in. There's a great small book called The Road Less Traveled by Scott Peck.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's an older book. I just listened to the audio version of it. But one of the things he says is he talks about how once you accept the difficult, the weight of the difficult ceases to feel so heavy. It's
Yeah.
just like it just once you like it's like going to the gym. Once you expect that the reps are going to hurt, they don't really hurt as bad anymore because they're not
Mm-hmm.
surprising you. You know what
Mm-hmm.
I mean? It's when I wake up every day and I'm expecting things to be easy today, and there never has been a guarantee that it will be easy, but somehow we all live with the hope that it will be.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just never going to be that way, which is why I think Jesus placed that daily in there.
Mm-hmm.
Daily you
Mm-hmm.
sacrifice, daily you die a little bit. Paul
Mm-hmm.
said he died daily, right?
Yep.
The
Yep.
Bhutanese, you know the Bhutanese are some of the happiest people in the world.
No, I didn't.
You know why? I
Why?
know they're all Buddhist, and people are going to be like, well, that's not Jesus. And I get it, right? But one of the reasons demographers and sociologists say that they are some of the happiest people in the world is because part of the teachings that they have every day is they must think about their death
Mm-hmm.
every day, multiple times a day. They have to think about that the end will be here. So how do I want to meet it? And you want to meet it being kind. You want to meet it being gentle. You want to meet it being thankful, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not begrudgingly or whatever. So if we think about that, if we apply that kind of daily mentality of keeping things in perspective, then I think life actually gets easier when I accept that it's not going to be easy.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's counterculture. It's
It's
counterculture.
it's bro. It's counter everything. It's counter comfort. It's counter culture. It's counter. And that's the place we need to get to. Man, last night I was feeding my son. He's 20 months old. I'm rocking him in the chair. I'm feeding him, about to put him down, and I was thinking about my death. And if
Wow.
I thought, man, if I died tonight, if I didn't wake up in the morning, who would he know me to be
Thing.
as his
It's heavy.
father when he grows up, when he's 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12? Who will I be have been to him when he looks back and he hears the Dad Nation podcast and he watches my YouTube videos and people talk about who I was to them and how's he gonna what kind of life will I have lived, you know? And dude, I was weeping
Wow.
because it's just like that's real.
Yeah.
I had a nephew who died last fall, drunk driving
Yeah.
accident. And then instantly, 18 years old, I mean, listen,
So,
this quote shook me when I heard it. Time is the only currency we spend without knowing the remaining balance. Okay. I don't know if I have 60 minutes left or 60 years left. I spend time all the time and I don't know how much I have left.
hmm.
And so it's so important that I cease every moment, that I take every thought captive,
Hmm.
that I lead myself well, that I show up powerfully in every room that I go into, that I make an impact, that I serve people, that
Hmm.
I love my wife. So I don't know how much time I have left, right?
Yeah.
But however much time I have, whether it's 6 months or 6 years or 60 years, I need to know at the end of my life that I made the best of it.
It's
So
so
that
good.
when I get the glory, the Lord says, "Well done, thy good and faithful servant." Like that's man, that's it. We need to think about that. And
Yeah,
maybe it's morbid, whatever, but it is what it is.
yeah, it is morbid and it is heavy, but I think that's part of the reason why we have so much trouble in our culture today is because we're constantly trying to avoid the heavy. We're trying to avoid pain and we're overfed and we're undernourished somehow. You know what I mean? We're bigger and sicker than we've ever been. It's just we're sadder. We're the most therapied generation ever. We have more anxiety and depression than ever, right? So I think, and I don't think it's because of life has gotten harder. I really don't.
No.
Ain't nobody out there lining up in a freaking shield wall right now to invade another land with axes and picks. You know what I'm saying? Like nobody's dying a really gruesome death today, usually. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I don't think life is harder. I think we are more inclined to avoid responsibility and pain. And I
Mm-hmm.
think somehow we've been convinced that that is what real life is not having pain. And I don't
Mm-hmm.
think that's the case. I don't think Jesus modeled that. I don't think the apostles modeled that. And I don't think that people who've had great lives that I would want to mimic modeled that. I think great people went through extremely difficult times usually.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
they owned it up to it, you know,
yeah, we avoid the heavy and then wonder why we're not happy.
because
It's
we're
like,
built
well,
for the heavy.
yeah. I mean, I know you've talked about this, I've talked about this, but literally every part of life that you think about, growth only comes through adversity.
Yes,
You don't get a beautiful marriage by never fighting. You get a great marriage by duking it out, setting up boundaries,
literally.
being firm.
And
Yeah.
refusing to quit.
Yeah, exactly. You don't get strong by not working out. You literally tear your fibers and have them
Hmm.
repair, right? Your children don't like you don't learn how to have a strong work ethic by never working.
Yeah,
Work your fingers to the bone. If you don't want to be an entrepreneur and have a successful business, you think it's just going to be handed to you? Like
no,
nothing happens without significant adversity.
yeah,
And so I think we just live in a comfortable culture, and
yeah,
and we're being subjected to, which we're in full control of, but the highlight reels of everyone else, and we're comparing ourselves to everyone else,
true.
and we don't understand what success looks like for us. And so we
Yeah.
let everyone else write the definition of success, and we start
Hmm.
living for everyone else instead of ourselves. And then we're wondering why we're so miserable, and we don't even know what we truly want at the end of the day. And when we do, so Adam, 90% of the guys I work with, one of the first questions I ask them is, "What do you want?"
And that's probably one of the hardest questions to answer.
I would say at least 9 out of 10 of them have no idea. And so then what happens is, well, I've been building these businesses, or I've been in this leadership position this whole time. I've just been working. I've been building someone else's dream, or this has been my dream, and I don't actually know what I want. So then when we finally do get down to what they want, which is usually, I want to be a great husband. I want
Yeah.
to know my kids. I want them to love me. And I'm like, okay, well, let's take a look at that. So here's what you say you want, and here's what your words say you want, but here's what your actions say you want. Because
Hmm.
your words are saying you want a great marriage, but your actions are saying you care more about work than you do your wife. Your words
Mm.
are saying I want to know my kids, but your actions are saying you're screaming at them and snapping and losing your cool, and they're afraid of you, right? You say I want to be healthy and I want to be around to walk my daughter down the aisle, but your actions are saying you don't care about your body because you're slamming cheeseburgers in the drive-thru on the way home from work every day. So your actions are not aligning with what you say you want. So let's get really
Hmm.
honest. How's
Yeah.
that working for you? Right?
Yeah. That's tough. That
Well, and that's
ownership piece is
yeah.
huge. When you start creating a mirror, um, many of us don't like what we see. And I think and I think most people will boil down what they want, particularly men, because I am one. So I would imagine If most guys are even similar to me in any way, you're going to boil down things to things in life that only I can fulfill well, which is I want to be a great dad. I want to be a great husband. I want to be somebody my wife likes, not just is married to.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like I tell my wife all the time, I like her,
Hmm.
not just I love her.
That's
Because
huge.
love can be a feeling, right? Or a decision. I'm just deciding to love you. But you don't decide to like people. You either like them or you just don't like them. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Hmm.
So, and like, I want to be a great dad. I want to help other people change their lives for Jesus and in a better way, right? Those are only things I can do. I don't care about growing somebody else's business. I don't care about making more money in particular because what does that mean? But I think when we boil it down, it comes down to really the root things of what men are built for, right?
Hmm.
Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. But I think we struggle, and I think here's why we wrestle with it.
Mm-hmm.
Because you think about the masculine, the essence of the masculine, and this, if you're a woman and you're listening to this, this is going to be really valuable. Um, the masculine is driven by accomplishments, by excellence, by
Mm-hmm.
mission, by purpose, right?
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
A feminine essence is about being, masculine essence is about doing. And so we're all about action, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
when we go to work, it's really easy to tell if we're successful and we're doing great because we get a performance bonus or we
Mm-hmm.
secure new contracts or revenue is up at this quarter, fill in the blank. It's really simple. Yeah, I'm doing great. The boss gave me an attaboy. But when you go home, it's really hard to define those metrics. I tell
At
people
home is
all the
more
time,
about being.
exactly. I mean, your 6-year-old daughter is not going to come up to you and be like, "Hey, Daddy, here are 5 strategic reasons why you're an effective father." Like it's not, you know what I mean?
That would be awesome. Like, this is really great. Let me take notes.
And it won't. How do you measure if you've made progress in your emotional health?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's also intangible, and so
Yep,
we struggle, right? And here's the
we
thing:
do.
a man's greatest need, two greatest needs, is to feel respected and to feel competent. Okay. And so what happens is you don't necessarily, you need that affirmation of feeling competent, but it's so hard to understand what it looks like to be competent. Number one, because of the cultural things that we talked about earlier about masculinity and all that stuff. But then at the same time, a lot of these metrics don't exist at home like they do at work. And
Mm-hmm.
so
That's
you
true.
don't feel competent. And so
Mm-hmm.
what happens is you go back to work because it's really tactical. It's really easy to see your success.
Mm-hmm.
You're respected by your colleagues or your employees or whatever. And so what happens is it's more comfortable to exist at work than it is at home. So then what happens is your wife doesn't feel loved because you're not there. And so she starts to disrespect you because she doesn't feel loved, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then, when you do come back home, because you're being disrespected, you feel incompetent. And so you're even more uncomfortable. And so we call this a crazy cycle, right? Which is based off the book Love and Respect. But at the end of the day, this is why we get into these challenges because a wife's three greatest needs are to feel seen, heard, and safe. Those three things. But if you're never showing up, she's not feeling seen, she's not feeling heard, and she's not feeling safe. And so what happens is we spiral away from one another instead of
Mm-hmm.
toward one another. And so if men could understand that the rules don't apply at home like they do at work, it would be so much easier for us to really major on these majors that we're talking about, like showing up
Mm-hmm.
powerfully as a husband, as a leader, as a father. But it's so difficult to quantify, and we struggle because we problem solve, we strategize, we create solutions for 8, 10, 12 hours a day. We come
Uh-huh.
home and the same rules don't apply. And what happens is men come
That's
home
good.
and they start shoving solutions down their family's throats because they think that that's what fixes it, and they're saying, no, 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 I don't want to hear that, right? And
I just
so
need you to be here. Or,
exactly this tension exists.
mm-hmm.
And so what happens is men end up treating their families like employees, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or their date nights end up looking like board meetings with alcohol or with wine. They talk about the agenda, who's picking up the kids, what's going on with the budget, blah blah blah. It's like you're not running a business, man. You're like trying to show
Mm-hmm.
up and love and lead your family.
That's a very interesting observation. And I don't think you could be more correct. Like
Mm.
truly, I don't think you could. And have you noticed like a trend in social media and stuff? I try really hard to not be on it as much just because it's just not helpful. But there's a trend where it's like ladies asking, "What are you doing in the car in the driveway before you come inside?"
Mm.
Right? Why are you sitting in the car? Right? By yourself?
Mm-hmm.
Like, are you avoiding your family? Is that like, because that's what a lady would most likely think. And I think what actually, because I do it,
Mm-hmm.
I do it. What I'm doing is I'm transitioning.
Yes.
I'm transitioning from problem solving, output, producing. I'm creating content. I'm teaching. I'm like solving people's problems to now letting that go to being. I'm going
Mm-hmm.
to be dad. I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to be a husband. And that means being kind, speaking gently, being excited to see people, listening to the long versions of all the stories. The long version, not the hey, 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 can you give me the can you get to the bottom line? Because I really want to solve this, right? When my daughter's like, and then she said, and then I said, and then it was like, oh my God. Like when my daughter's doing that, I'm like, I can't believe she said that. Oh my God. You know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
that is not natural for me.
Yeah,
I want
100%.
to go and put more weights on the bar and do more
Mm-hmm.
repetitions of progressively growing in a particular area,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I think that's a very interesting observation, that transitioning from states of being, right?
It's huge. It's huge. Yeah, because and it's also hard, right? Because you're doing it all day. So
Yeah.
you're doing it all day at work, but you're also wired that way. Like I
Yep.
just said, the essence of masculinity is, I mean, there's a reason. I think I mentioned this last time we were on the podcast together. But you look at a Super Bowl party, right? You see the men sitting around the TV, looking at the watching the game, watching these athletes who are some of the best in the world, be on mission. They're excellent in what they do. They have a strong sense of purpose and calling, and
Mm-hmm.
men are like moths to a flame. Where are the women? They're standing around the island, probably, nurturing the relationship, sipping a glass of wine, having some snacks. How are the kids? How are the girls? Nurturing relationships, because the feminine is driven by emotions, by relationships, by
Mm-hmm.
intuition. So we're wired so differently,
Yeah,
and so you got
totally.
that playing against us as well. So it's important for us to understand that and say, okay, well, now what do we do about it? Right? I call it the
Mm.
preparation pause, and it's just simply like you take 5 minutes in the car, in the driveway, in the garage, wherever, and you take a couple minutes to wrap up any close or wrap up any open loops. Now, this is called the Zeigarnik effect. You can Google that if you want some time, but really what it means is that um, if there were open loops, open conversations, unsent emails, proposals that aren't submitted, whatever, they are open loops that take up real estate in our brain and reduce our mental capacity for other
Mm-hmm.
things. So what we do is we wrap up whatever we can, close as many loops as possible, and then we take a few moments to breathe. Right, the 4-7-8 breathing method. If you've never heard of it, it's real simple. You inhale for 4 seconds, you hold it for 7 seconds, you exhale for 8 seconds. 4-7-8. You do that 3-4 times, which really gets you out of this state of fight or flight, gets you out of any kind of dysregulation,
Mm-hmm.
calm, centered, and then you ask yourself, and you externalize, which we talked a
Mm-hmm.
little bit about. And I know you've asked this question a lot in the past as well. But now that I've closed the loops, I've got the mental capacity, to accept whatever's on the other side of the door. I've regulated myself emotionally. Now I'm going to ask
Mm-hmm.
myself, what does it look like to be a powerful, a present father when I walk through the door?
Mm-hmm.
What does it look like for me to be a loving husband as I walk through
Mm-hmm.
those doors?
It's good.
And answer that question and then go through the door, because that's the reality here, Adam, is that it's our responsibility as men to be the calmest, to be the lowest heart rate in the room,
Mm-hmm.
right? And if you can just do that, then you're winning the battle, man.
Yeah.
Like, and you probably heard this, that's our responsibility to be, the thermostat, not the thermometer, right? But that's
Yeah.
what happens, right? A thermometer comes in and reacts to the room. So you come in after you've had a crazy day, and your wife is upset, kids are screaming, the dog's running around with the the guest towel in his mouth, whatever,
Yeah, exactly.
and everything. And you're like, well, I don't need this. I had a crazy day. Everyone calm down. And you're reacting and you're actually adding to the chaos.
Yeah,
But understand, if you're hearing this today, you carry an emotional significance. Your presence can be the
very
soothing balm
true.
that your family needs. And
Hmm.
so you get to be a thermostat. You set the emotional climate. Come into
Yep.
the room, bring the calm, be the lowest heart rate in the room, so that when you walk through the door, your wife's response is, Adam's home.
Oh,
I
thank
can,
God. Yeah.
right? Thank God,
Like,
Adam's home. I can
oh,
turn
thank
my
God.
brain off.
Not, oh crap.
Oh crap, here we are. Now I've got to walk on eggshells. Now it's a
Yep.
it's an emotional
Yep.
minefield.
And I'll be honest, for me, for years, I was the wrecker,
Me too.
because I was not in control of my emotions. I was not in control of where I wanted to see my family go and be and how I wanted them to be. And so I would come in and like my wife would say, you suck all the air out of the room.
Yeah.
You just suck all the air out of the room and nobody else can breathe.
Mhm.
And I was like,
Wow.
yeah, I mean, talk about a punch right in the cojones. You know what I mean? You're just like,
Powerful.
I'm over here working all day to try to provide, and I'm coming home and literally presenting the opposite of that. I'm presenting none of the tangibles or the intangibles of this thing I'm trying to secure, which is a future. I'm not
And
presenting any of the calm, the peace, the
mhm.
security. I'm not presenting any of that.
Yeah.
So,
And but we've been designed to, going back to this idea of like you've been built for adversity. You psychologically, you have the ability to contain your thoughts, to compartmentalize your thoughts
yeah,
in a much more powerful way
yeah.
than your feminine partner does. And so use that, right? Contain
Hmm.
it, compartmentalize, and show
Put it
up and
away.
be peace in your home.
Yep,
It's so huge. And
yep.
to come full circle, this is self-leadership. This is the importance,
100%.
yeah, of personal leadership, man.
Yeah, that's that one of the things I think that we get twisted, and this is just my own experience. I'm not necessarily coaching guys in this direction, but it comes up because you're dealing with, like I tell people all the time, like, losing weight, getting in shape, lifting weights, that's like 20% of the problem. 80% of the problem is dealing with yourself and managing your own emotions,
Hmm.
you know? But when you do take that transition time, that's when you allow yourself to feel whatever you need to feel, like the
Hmm.
anxiety or whatever, and you just take a deep breath and you put it away.
Hmm.
You have to just put it away, put it in its spot. It's still there. You're not denying it. I think guys feel like they're not supposed to feel it.
Hmm.
Like, I'm not supposed to feel this pressure. I'm not supposed to feel angry. I'm not supposed to feel like tense on the inside. But no, you're going to because you're a human being and life is difficult. You're going to feel those things. But like you're saying, you're built for it. You're built for the adversity. We're uniquely wired to be able to let this be a reality over here, but I'm going to deal with this,
Hmm.
right? This is a reality, work's burning down or whatever. Somebody really pissed me off and I almost throat punched them from across the office, but I didn't come home and take that out on my family. I
Hmm.
didn't even tell them the story,
Hmm.
it is what it is. And I think that that is a leadership technique, and you're not going to get it right all the time. You're
No.
going to fail at it. You're going to come home and you're going to try at the door to keep it all intact, and you're going to fail at times. But it's the constant leadership piece of start again, try again, keep trying, bro. Just keep. Quitting is not even on the list of options because
Hmm.
like if you quit, you're like you're going to do what?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well,
Like if you get, you know.
this is choosing the pain. This is choosing
Hmm.
discipline over regret, right?
Hmm.
It's choosing the
Agreed.
short-term pain for the long-term gain. And yeah,
Agreed.
grace is huge in this component. It's like, one of my clients was saying the other day, is like, man, last week, uh, what is he said? 4 of the 7 days I lost my cool. And he was kicking himself. And I said, okay, well, before we were working together, how many days did you lose your cool? He said, seven.
All
Seven
of
out of
them.
7 days, right? So I'm like, okay, you went from 0 to 3 entire days where you didn't snap at your kids or your wife. That is enormous.
Yeah.
That's huge over the course of what, 2 months? Give yourself some grace, man. This is a
Yes.
skill, right? That is cultivated and developed over time.
Yep.
Emotional intelligence, having capacity to hold space, not just for yourself and what you're experiencing, but for your wife and your children. That takes time, right? And
Yep.
so have grace for yourself on the journey, because that's another trap we fall into. And it's very similar to, on the fitness thing. It's like I mean, you said this on my show, which I never forgot. You said, if you can't meet your goals, lower them, right? And it's like, I was like, dang, I never heard a motivational person say that before. But
Like do
it's so,
less.
do less. So
Yeah.
it's like, in the same sense, it's like, what's the point of making a fitness goal if it's so big that you'll never meet it? What's the point in having the goal to be like this emotionally resilient guy and holding yourself to such a high standard that you're going to just destroy yourself because you
Hmm.
never met the goal? Okay, lower it. Did I lose my
Hmm.
cool? Was there one day this week where I didn't snap at my kids? Amazing. Was there
Yeah.
one day this week that I didn't overeat? Was there one day that I, was truly present and focused and listened to my wife and didn't check out? Amazing. Let's start there, right?
Yeah. I love
So
that.
it's huge.
The stacking small wins
Yes.
is a undeniable way to build momentum.
Hmm.
But if you're only calculating your deficits or your losses, how are you possibly going to be motivated to win?
Hmm.
Right?
Have you ever heard of the concept of the gap in the gain?
No.
Okay, let me tell you about it real quick. I wish I made it up, but it was in a book called
For
the
for
book's
our
called.
for our cases, you made it up.
Okay, sure. It was me. It was brilliant. It's a book that I wrote called The Gap in the Gain. Um, but it was by Dan Sullivan and Dr. Benjamin Hardy. But it really, what the concept here is, we talk about being, we don't have contentment, we don't have peace because we're
Hmm.
living by other people's definition of success. And so every single day, and this applies to both men and women, we have the opportunity to live in the gap or the gain. Okay. So when we live in the gap, we're looking to the future, to some ideal that we haven't really defined. There's no metrics
Hmm.
around it. It's just some ideal that maybe someone else set for us. Maybe it
Hmm.
was the neighbor down the street who had a new boat, and we're like, well, that's success. I want a boat like him, or whatever. It's the carrot on the stick, you know. It's the horizon thinking. So if me and you were in the middle of the ocean in a rowboat, which I sure hope to God we're not stranded. But I mean, hey, if it
Yeah,
would
I
be for
agree.
anybody, it would be with anybody. It could be you. I mean, that'd be fun. But
We'd have a good time.
we'd have a good time. We'd make the best of it. We'd probably record a podcast episode. Let's be real.
We would
Um,
try.
it would be like me looking at the horizon and saying, Adam, we're gonna row to where the sky meets the sea, and when we get there, that's where the land will be. But the problem is the faster we row, the faster the horizon gets away from us.
Hmm.
And so it's just like you're striving for this ideal thing in the future that you don't even really know what it is, and you don't even know if you've defined it. And so you're just exhausted, and you're measuring yourself to the thing that you haven't accomplished,
Hmm.
as you say, your deficits. So that's living in the gap versus, instead of looking forward, to look backward into the gain and saying, where have I come from? What have I
Hmm.
accomplished? Man, I lost 10 pounds. Or, man, me and my wife went on 2 date nights last month. That's incredible.
Hmm.
Or, I didn't, whatever it is that you're struggling with. And you're actually comparing the steps, or comparing where you've come from, right? That's
Yeah.
huge, because here's the thing: either way, you're going to get to the future. It's coming for you, right?
Yeah.
The question is what version of you do you want to be there? The one that's
Hmm.
stressed out and exhausted and constantly living in the
It's very
gap and
good.
comparing himself to
Very good.
something that someone else defined, or getting there from a place of peace and contentment and celebration of all that they've accomplished along the way. And so for me, I choose to live in the game, right?
Mm.
Looking, am I better today than I was yesterday
Mm.
versus the gap? And we get caught in the gap trap all the time. I actually just did a podcast episode a couple of weeks ago called The Gap Trap, and how to like get out of that rut. But that's what happens, right? And so this
Yeah.
idea of like measuring ourselves against the deficits or the future or whatever, it's really tricky. And
Yeah.
we don't have grace for ourselves when we're doing that, right?
Yeah. It's 100% true. And I think This might be somewhere where maybe we'll start wrapping up here.
Yeah.
But I mean, we could literally keep talking about this because it literally is your entire life. It's like this is how your life has to be. And have you ever read The Infinite Game by Simon Sinek?
Yes.
So this is an infinite game.
Yes.
Fitness, self-leadership, being a dad, being a husband, being a business leader is an infinite game. You never reach a place where you stop
Mhm.
having to train, stop having to play the game. The
Mhm.
goal actually is to see how long can you stay in the game,
Mhm.
right? And the problem is that most people are looking for the scoreboard to reach a certain place and then they get to rest on the bench. Or life gets to a certain place and now I can take it easy. Well, you literally just stepped out of the game at that point.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So there is no stepping out of this. There is no, anything Mitch is teaching his clients or anything I'm teaching clients is they're not things that you arrive at. There are things that you integrate into your life and you continue to train at them. Like that's what Paul talks about training unto godliness.
Mm.
Like the disciplines of life are training unto godliness. They are literally things that I do in my daily life that teach me how to live a godly life or live the life that God would have for me, or that I would maybe, if you're not a believer, the life that you would want for yourself.
Mhm.
Right? So it's like the infinite part of this. There is no arrival.
Yeah.
There is only more,
Well, and that
getting
goes
better.
back, yeah, that goes back to what we're saying about, um, just this idea of choosing the hard, of
Yes.
understanding that adversity is part of the game. And that's actually the whole point of all this.
Yes.
I'm about to do a Spartan event
You are.
tomorrow. Yeah.
I
And
hope you've been running, homie. Because they love to tell you about all them obstacles, and people are like, I'm doing these things. 90% of it, bro, is just foot in front of foot. Just
yeah,
you better
totally.
be running.
Well, this
But
is
anybody who signs up, I'm like, you beast. Because
this is actually not a traditional race, but it's a hurricane heat. So
what does that
it's
mean?
it's 4 hours of it's essentially a team version where you're on a team of
Oh,
5 or 6 guys.
yes.
You're still doing the obstacles, you're still doing the running, you're still doing tons of burpees, but you have to have a 30-pound rucksack on the whole time with an additional 3 liters of water. So I've been running 5Ks, 6Ks, whatever, just piddling around with this 30-pound rucksack and a big jug of water. And it's killing me, dude, because I'm like over 200 pounds. I'm not that tall. I'm not the tall guy like you. So it's like, bro, it's hot and it's heavy. My father-in-law picked up the bag. He was over visiting a couple days ago, and he just went to move it. And he's like, "What's in this bag?" I'm like, just wait. He's like, what are you using it for? I said, I'm doing an event. He's like, and so I start telling him about it. He's like, why on earth would you do that to yourself?
What's in this bag? Glory, Father.
Pain is in that bag. But I was just like, this is planned adversity, right?
Yeah.
This is intentional adversity that I'm putting in my life to
Yep.
challenge myself, to make promises to myself, to keep them, to say that I can do hard things, so that psychologically I'm building my resilience, physically
Yes.
I'm building my resilience, which is going
Yes.
to massively have returns in my marriage, my fatherhood, and my career, my business. So yes, I will face the hard thing. And you know what? I'm actually going to intentionally design my life to put hard things in front of me and
Yep.
face them to make me stronger. And that's the entire point. And before
I
I do
love
that
that.
race tomorrow, I'm going to have another goal, for the fall, because I have to. Otherwise,
Yep.
I get soft, right?
I think guys need goals too. Um,
Huge.
I think you need something to fight for, to train for. Like I'm training for a jiu-jitsu competition at the end of this month. And last night I was like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
Like blank this. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? Like what on earth? I was like driving back from class just mad. You know what I mean? Just mad at just like
Yeah.
just chewing on myself and I woke up with it. You know what I mean? But I think you need a goal. Like I'm more stable. I am more confident. I'm more myself when
Hmm.
I'm pushing towards something difficult.
Hmm.
I'm bored. If I'm bored, I'm dangerous,
Hmm.
right?
Exactly.
If I'm bored, I'm dangerous. Like I'm gonna drink more than I need to. I'm gonna eat more than I need to. I'm gonna doom scroll more than I need to. You know what I'm saying? Like all the things that I don't prefer to have in my life, I do more of those things when I don't have a challenge set in front of me.
Hmm. Yeah,
So,
I agree 100%, Adam. And I would say if you're a man and you're listening, you feel apathetic, you feel
hmm
like bored, you feel like a hollow on the inside,
hmm
you need a mission. You
yeah,
need to connect with your purpose.
yep,
And if you're a woman and you're listening and you're married to a man who that sounds like him, come alongside him and help him build a mission, help him get on mission doing something to align with something that's going to empower
so good.
him and put the fire back in his eyes because he needs to be building something. I don't care what it
hmm
is, whether it's his body, his career, his relationships, or if it's a car he's restoring in the garage or a wood working project, something. We need to do something or else we
Yep,
start to check out,
agreed.
distract, numb ourselves, you name it, right? So
hmm
huge for
That's
him.
so good. So good, Mitch. I'm thankful for your insights, for, using your story and using what God's done in your life to help so many men. It's helped me because I mean I learned from these conversations. Like, you know, I'm a dude and I've had, like me and Kim just celebrated 24 years this month and 24 years married and I was talking to
Gonna say
somebody and I was
24
like,
years old. I thought you were gonna say 24 years old. I mean, you look freaking young, man. It's great.
no, yeah, I've been married to her for half of my life now because I'm 48. So I've been with her for 50% of my years.
Wow.
So,
Sorry, keep going.
but like well, talking to somebody, and I was like, we've had countless chances to quit on this. Like we've never like discussed divorce, but we've both thought about it. So we both thought about like, you know what, forget her, forget him, like whatever, or whatever the situation is. And I'm just, I'm always, like I said, it's the infinite game. I'm trying really hard to learn, and the conversations with you are always insightful. And I really appreciate your willingness to share your own pain for the sake of others,
Mm,
not to have to deal with as much of it. You know what I
yeah,
mean? So
appreciate
I
it.
appreciate it. Where can people find you, Mitch? Where can guys, because this is going to resonate with guys, and guys are going to be like, you know what? All that sounds great, guys. I don't know what to freaking do. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? Can somebody tell me what to
Hmm.
do? And I think you would be a great resource there. So, Mitch, can you tell people where to find you? Where can they get information?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
yeah, just
Thank you.
drop the details, brother.
Yeah, I keep it real simple. I help people three different ways, three C's, right? So first of all, it's content. So the Dad Nation podcast. If the kind of guy is like you're kind of on the sidelines, you're like, I'd like to learn a little bit more. Just check out the Dad Nation podcast. I mean, we talk about all this stuff and way more on the show.
Hmm
The second one is so it's content courses. I'm working on a program right now called the High Performance Husband. So if you're the kind of
Oh,
guy who wants to take action but you're more of a lone wolf and you kind of want to test the waters, it's a trilogy that's a self-guided program that pretty much has everything I teach my one-on-one clients. So it's that second level up, and then the third one is coaching, right? So content, courses, and coaching. And that, of course, is for the person who's like, man, I want to jump in with both feet. I need to make a
mm,
change. I need to connect with my wife. I need to restore this relationship with my kids. I need to, fill in the blank. You want to go all in, just I do that as well. And so, Adam, I'll give you the links,
I would love that.
and then just hit any of them. I would love to connect.
Mm,
I'm passionate about this, and also, Adam, honestly, just as a way to say thank you, I'd love to give your listeners a free gift today, if that's okay with you.
that'd be awesome. Yeah, well, hook us up, bro.
So, in my experience in working with men, I'm not sure if I did I share the statistics about divorce with you on this recording. Or was that before we
Not
hit
on the
record?
recording, no.
Okay, so let me share real quick. 7 out of 10 divorces in the United States today are initiated by women. Okay, now in situations where the wife is a high earner, she's educated, that number jumps to 90%. So 9 out of every 10 divorces are initiated by women. Now, of those statistics, 80% of the time The main reason for the divorce is because the wife feels disconnected from the husband emotionally. Okay, so we know the stats aren't in our favor as men, right?
Mm-mm.
We know that there's a huge deficit and we need to
Mm-hmm.
meet our partners. We need to meet our wives on an emotional level. And for all the reasons we discussed in this episode, we struggle with that. And
Yep.
so I've created a framework for you that you can take. It's just called the connection code. Okay. It's 50 questions that have been strategically designed to spark the fun and bring the fire back. 50
Ooh.
questions that cover your like fun, leisure, passion, intimacy, you name
Mm-hmm.
it. And then basically it's just a PDF you download. And then if you want to go out on a date, pull some questions off the list, or maybe it doesn't have to be that. You could just put your kids to bed, pour up a glass of wine, whatever, have a conversation, take some questions off the list. I'm literally giving this to you on a silver platter. And I'll tell you, I have women emailing me, message me being like, who did I go on a date with last night? Because that man was not my husband. The questions he was asking about. So it's actually powerful. It's very powerful. So if that sounds like you and you want to connect,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe just kind of you feel like you went from like soulmates to roommates, or maybe you feel like, like I mentioned earlier, that date nights have become more like board meetings, and it's just like you're a roommate now, then this can help you in a significant way.
So
So
great. Yeah.
it's just dadnationcode.com/code, and you can put in the show notes. But honestly, at the end of the day, Adam, you just Google Dad Nation, you'll see my face plastered everywhere. So would love to
I
connect
love
with
it.
you.
Mitch, thank you so much, man. You're doing a great service. There's a lot of need out there, man. And keep it up. If we can help, we want to. Guys, go visit Mitch's website. We'll put all his links in the show notes. And you know what? Just hit us back. Please reach out to Mitch because we need better dads, you know. Well, I
Mm-hmm.
would say this. All dads can be great dads. All husbands can be great husbands. So, and we all just need a little bit of coaching usually. So,
Mm-hmm.
Mitch
Yeah.
is a great
Well,
resource.
thank you, Adam. And I would say, I say this at the end of every podcast, but when the dad gets better, the whole family wins, and that's
Absolutely.
just the reality. The rising tide, the rising ship, the whatever that phrase is,
The
rising tide
rising
lifts all
tide
ships.
lifts all ships. Yes.
Yeah, like that. We are the rising tide, and so
Hmm.
understand that. And
Agreed.
so your family can win. This entire generation will win if you level up. So
Very
Adam,
true.
thank you for having me on the
Yeah,
show, man.
dude.
This has
Of
been
course.
this has been a
It's always
pleasure.
a pleasure, bro.
Hmm.
Appreciate you. We'll talk soon, okay?
All right, brother.
All right.